All right, so today we're going to deep dive into some of Mexico's weirdest laws. We found this YouTube video titled Mexico's Weirdest Laws by Ian on the internet. And yeah, some of these laws are so strange, like you'll be wondering if they're even real.
Yeah, what's really interesting is how these laws give us a peek into Mexico's culture and history, like
Mhm.
stuff that we might not even think about.
So, you know how people think Mexico has like super chill drinking laws? Like, picture yourself just kicking back on a beach with a margarita. Seems pretty harmless, right?
Well, actually, it's illegal to drink in public anywhere in Mexico, even in those touristy spots. And the crazy part is the consequences can be anything, from like a huge fine to even spending a night in jail.
Oh, wow. Can you imagine planning this amazing vacations and then ending up in a Mexican jail because you had a beer on the beach? Not the kind of souvenir you'd want to bring back.
Yeah, it shows how important it is to know the local laws and customs, especially when you're in a different country. What might seem like no big deal back home could get you in serious trouble somewhere else.
Totally. Speaking of trouble, this next story sounds like something straight out of a movie, but it actually happened. You know that saying about being in the wrong place at the wrong time? Well, this story takes it to a whole new level.
So there was this woman from Arizona traveling by bus from Mexico. And get this, she was unknowingly sitting on a seat that was hiding a bunch of marijuana, like 12 pounds of it. And she got arrested for drug trafficking, facing some serious Mexican law.
Wow. Can you imagine just trying to get home and all of a sudden you're caught up in an international drug bust? That's like a travel nightmare come true.
Yeah, and it really shines a light on how intense Mexico's drug war is and the strict laws they have around drugs. There's no bail for trafficking charges. Trials can drag on for years. And she could have faced up to 25 years in prison. It makes you think twice about being aware of your surroundings and the consequences of even accidentally getting mixed up in illegal stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's lighten things up a bit with something a little less heavy, but still pretty weird. Apparently, in the state of Sonora, they have this whole list of banned baby names.
Well, yeah. So the idea is to protect kids from names that are offensive or could cause problems for them. Basically, the government's saying, hey, maybe Rambo or Virgin aren't the best names for your kid.
Yeah, I saw some of the names on that list, and some are pretty crazy. Batman, sponsorship. Even Facebook made the cut. Can you imagine telling your kid they can't have the same name as a superhero or a social media giant?
I know, it's wild. It really shows how different cultures view personal freedom compared to the government protecting children. It makes you think about where we draw the line
Right.
between a parent's right to choose a name and protecting a kid from potentially being made fun of or facing problems because of their name.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think about the impact of a name and whether the government should have a say in something so personal. Speaking of things that can get you in trouble, let's talk about something we've probably all done at some point: peeing in public.
Ah, yes, the classic.
It seems like relieving yourself in public is a big no-no in Mexico, especially if you're a tourist.
Yeah, especially if you're a tourist.
Ah.
Maybe it's the tequila talking, but those fines can add up quickly if you get caught with your pants down.
Literally. So if nature calls while you're in Mexico, do yourself a favor and find a proper restroom. Trust me, it's not worth the risk. Okay, this next one feels like it's straight out of a history book: the infamous trouser mandate.
Oh, yeah, this one's a classic.
Believe it or not, there was a time when men in Mexico could get in trouble for wearing anything other than trousers in public. Sounds crazy now, right?
It does.
I can't imagine trying to enforce that in a country known for its beaches and hot weather. Talk about a fashion police nightmare.
Yeah.
But seriously, what was the thinking behind this law?
But it goes back to when Mexico was trying to modernize and present a certain image to the world. Trousers were seen as a symbol of progress and being sophisticated, while other types of clothing were considered too casual or even disrespectful. It shows how fashion and social norms are connected to bigger changes in society.
It's funny how what was once considered progressive can become so outdated. Imagine getting arrested for wearing shorts on vacation. It just goes to show how much things can change over time.
Yeah, exactly. What might have been scandalous or a no-no in the past can become totally normal later on. And the other way around, too. It's like a reminder that what's considered acceptable behavior is always changing.
Totally. All right, this next one might bum out any party animals planning a trip to Mexico. Get this: no drinking for 72 hours before any election.
That's right. Whether you're a Mexican citizen or just visiting, you got to put those margaritas on hold for 3 whole days before any state or national election.
Wow, 3 whole days. So if you're heading to Mexico during election season, you might want to factor in a few days of sobriety. It makes you wonder if such a law could ever work in other countries. What do you think? Could something like that fly in the U.S.?
Hmm. That's an interesting thought. It really highlights how different cultures view elections and the role alcohol plays in society. Some cultures see alcohol as something to be enjoyed responsibly, while others are more cautious about it.
Especially during important civic events.
That's a good point. It makes you appreciate how different people can see something as simple as having a drink. Now, this next law might sound strange, especially if you're into cycling. Apparently in Mexico, you have to keep your feet on the pedals at all times while riding a bike.
Yep, that's the law. It comes from a 19th century accident involving a horse-drawn carriage and a cyclist. Apparently, the cyclist was coasting with their feet off the pedals when the accident happened, and that led to this rule, which seems pretty outdated now.
I know. Can you imagine trying to explain this to a kid who loves doing bike tricks? It's crazy how things that happened so long ago can still affect the rules we have today, even if they seem kind of silly now. It's a good example of how safety rules often come about because of specific incidents. Even if those incidents happened decades or even centuries ago, what might have been a necessary precaution back then could be totally unnecessary now. As technology and how we do things change, it reminds us that laws aren't always about what's happening right now, but they're a result of past events and the worries people had at the time.
That's true. All right, get ready for some serious irony. We're going to Guanajuato, a city famous for a place called Kissing Alley, but wait for it.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
In 2009, Guanajuato made a law that banned kissing in public. It was part of this whole anti-obscenity campaign pushed by a conservative political party.
Oh, wow.
Talk about mixed messages. You have a place called Kissing Alley and then you ban kissing. Luckily, this law didn't last very long.
Yeah, I got a lot of backlash from locals and tourists. Imagine going to a place known for its romantic vibe and then being told you can't even kiss your partner. It shows how cultural norms, political agendas, and individual freedoms can clash.
That's so true. It reminds us that laws can be used to reflect and shape what society values. And sometimes those attempts to shape values can totally backfire. This whole thing reminds me of that saying you can't legislate morality. Sometimes trying to control how people behave through laws just doesn't work.
I agree. It can lead to unintended consequences and even make people resist and rebel. It's like a reminder that laws work best when they're based on common sense and reflect the values of the people they're meant to govern.
Yeah, that makes sense. So next time you're strolling through Kissing Alley, feel free to pucker up without worrying about a fine. Just maybe steer clear of those public urination spots while you're at it. But on a serious note, this whole kissing ban thing brings up some interesting questions about how much the government should be involved in our personal lives.
Definitely. It makes us think about where we draw the line between protecting public decency and respecting individual freedoms. It's a tricky balance that societies all over the world are dealing with, and there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
It's a debate that's happening everywhere, you know? What's okay in one culture might be totally off limits in another.
Hmm.
It really makes you think about how to navigate this globalized world where we're always bumping into people with different backgrounds and beliefs.
So true. Speaking of things that are taken super seriously, let's talk about the respect Mexicans have for their national anthem.
Oh, yeah. They have actual laws about how it should be performed. Like, any disrespect towards it, whether it's on purpose or not, can have serious consequences, like fines or even public apologies.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how seriously we take our own anthem. It's interesting to see how different cultures show their patriotism and national pride.
Yeah, for sure. National anthems carry a lot of history and emotion, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They can be a powerful symbol of unity and shared identity,
Mm-hmm.
especially during celebrations or times of crisis.
All right, snack lovers, listen up. This next one might be a bummer, especially if you're coming back to the U.S. from Mexico.
Okay, what is it?
So, you know how you can't bring back stuff like plants, animals, weapons, or drugs? Well, the U.S. also bans bringing pork products from Mexico.
What? Seriously?
Yeah.
So no bringing back those yummy chicharrones, those crispy pork rinds.
I know. It's heartbreaking.
It's all about preventing diseases and protecting the U.S. agricultural industry.
Mm.
I mean, those rules might seem a bit much for just a snack, but they're important for keeping people safe and protecting the economy.
Makes sense, I guess. It's a reminder that even something as simple as wanting some pork rinds can teach you about global trade and biosecurity.
It really is. It's a perfect example of how connected our world is. What you choose to snack on can actually have an impact on global trade disease prevention and economic policies.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, for our last strange law, we're going to dive into something a bit more complex and controversial, narco corridos.
Yes, narco corridos.
So for those who don't know, what are they exactly?
Well, they're a type of music that's really popular in northern Mexico, and they tell stories about drug traffickers and the cartel world. You can think of them like ballads that chronicle the lives and actions of these figures. Often it's hard to tell where the glorification ends and the storytelling begins.
Oh, okay, I see. So why are these songs such a big deal?
Well, in some parts of Mexico, public performances of narco corridos are completely banned. They worry that these songs make drug culture and violence seem glamorous, which could influence young people and contribute to more criminal activity.
So it's kind of like a clash between freedom of expression and keeping people safe.
Exactly. Some people say banning these songs is censorship and doesn't really solve the problems of drugs and violence. Others think it's necessary to protect communities and make it clear that glorifying crime is wrong.
It's a tough one. On one hand, artists should be able to express themselves even if their message is controversial. But on the other hand, if these songs are causing real harm, then you can understand why they want to stop them.
It's a complicated issue with no easy solutions. It makes you think about how powerful music and storytelling are and how they can influence people's behavior, for better or worse.
That's a good point. It's a reminder that even something as simple as a song can be connected to much bigger problems in society. And finding solutions means dealing with those bigger questions of freedom, responsibility, and how art affects our world.
Speaking of surprising connections, I have a little confession to make. Remember that law about cyclists having to keep their feet on the pedals all the time?
Yeah.
The one that supposedly came from that carriage accident back in the 1800s?
Yeah, the one that seemed a bit outdated, but also kind of funny. What about it?
Well, I did some more digging. And it turns out that law might be more of a myth than an actual rule. I couldn't find any official documents or legal text that proved it existed.
Wait, are you serious? So we've been talking about this whole bike law that isn't even real.
It seems that way. It's like one of those things everyone thinks is true, but there's no real proof.
Wow, talk about a twist. I guess even when we're trying to learn new things, we can still fall for misinformation.
It's a good reminder to always question what we think we know, even when something seems believable or everyone believes it.
So what does this mean for our deep dive into Mexico's weirdest laws?
Well, it doesn't change the fact that we've found all these other fascinating and sometimes truly strange laws, but it does show how important it is to think critically and be a little skeptical, even when we're looking at something fun and lighthearted.
It's true. We should always check the facts and look at things from different angles, especially these days when false information can spread so quickly.
Absolutely. It's about being curious, but also being smart, always questioning what we think we know and being open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
Well, this unexpected discovery has definitely added another layer to our conversation. It's not just about finding strange laws, but also about understanding how information is shared, interpreted, and sometimes even distorted over time.
Exactly. It makes you realize that even when we're exploring a topic like this, there's always more to learn and more to question.
I guess you could say that's what makes the deep dive so interesting. You never know where it might lead, and sometimes the best discoveries are the ones that make you rethink what you thought you knew.
Yeah, even with that busted myth, we still found some seriously interesting and sometimes just plain weird laws in Mexico.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We've gone through the cultural values and the historical events that shaped these laws, from respecting the national anthem to those complex drug ballads.
And we saw how laws can reflect society's worries, like the trouser mandate or that ban on kissing in public, and how they can start debates about personal freedom and social control.
Yeah, and we've also seen how laws change over time,
Yeah.
sometimes becoming outdated or even turning into myths, like that whole cyclist pedal law.
It's been quite a ride, entertaining and thought-provoking at the same time. It reminds us that even something as ordinary as laws can show us what a culture is really like. Absolutely. Laws are like a tapestry woven with history, tradition, and societal values. They tell a story about who we are, where we've come from.